Hello everyone and welcome to episode 105 of Knowing Wheel, and we decided to shake it up. It's been 104 episodes of nothing apart from Matt introing, but here I am doing the start of the video. So yeah, we're here. I can't remember what we're meant to talk about, but I think it's meant to be Formula 1. I probably should introduce Matt as well. So how are you doing, Matt? Are you all good?
I'm good, mate. I was so surprised that you did actually do the intro. I was halfway through getting a drink when you started.
There we go.
So
Perfect.
that's going to be the start of this week's show.
There we go. And we're ready to talk about the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix, which happened at the weekend. If you weren't aware, then go and watch it beforehand. It probably helps quite a lot for the enjoyment of this video. But yeah, it was a race. It overall wasn't particularly. It wasn't the best race in history, put it that way. But we're here to talk about it anyway. So yeah, shall we get straight into it?
Well, I've got to hand it to you, Jamie. That is a fantastic way to get people clicking off the video by saying it was a bad race immediately. But
I didn't say it was a bad race.
No, exactly. And of course, Jamie being the professional he is, he mentioned the fact that we'll have links, timestamps down below to certain points in the show. Of course, we'll have links to all our various social medias as well. Go give us both a follow on Twitter if you haven't already, at Jamie_183 or at Matt212YT. And of course, you can follow the Knowing Wheel page over there as well. We're going to start trying to post up a little bit more on that account. But yeah. Before the weekend, though, Jamie, there was already some controversy because there was concerns that Max Verstappen would get a 5-place grid penalty for a stomach replacement.
Yes, he's only allowed one stomach per season, so there was concerns that he might have to go over that cap in true Red Bull fashion and replace his stomach. But no, he didn't actually. But he did miss the media day on Thursday. He arrived late on Thursday night, so I'm sure he was gutted about that, to be honest. But he was fine for the race, recovered from his illness well, and yeah, sadly his car was also suffering a little bit later on in the weekend, but we'll get to that later.
We certainly will, and of course, I think we had a couple of other big things going on prior to the weekend. Of course, Charles Leclerc, after all the speculation, it was confirmed that he would be taking a 10-place grid penalty ready for Saudi. How Ferrari have managed that, we'll never quite understand, but yeah, already onto his third control electronics for the season is rather impressive. And then the other really weird one, which kind of surprised me, was of course the news that modes of transport, including bicycles now, are banned from Thursday's track walk.
Yeah, which seems like insanity. It seems like the FIA are really trying to clamp down on everything, which it feels a little bit like nitpicky, to be honest with you, but yeah, I mean, I guess it's their sport, it's their rules, it's their tracks, but it does feel a little bit stupid, a little bit like, why are you being so... It's like we're reversing the last 4 years of let them race, which maybe is a good thing, but there we go.
I mean, there's only two real reasons why I can think they've ditched the cycling or using other modes of transport for the track walk. Well, first of all, of course, the point being that a lot of drivers just don't do it anymore anyway. I mean, Hamilton, I think, has gone on the record saying he hasn't done a track walk since, 2016.
Yeah.
He's there like, I don't really care. And, of course, with simulators the way they are nowadays as well, they're so accurate that drivers know exactly what they're walking into on a weekend anyway, because, of course, they've done hundreds of laps back at the factory, apart from, again, Lewis, who often doesn't enjoy doing simulator work. Either they've stopped him from doing it so fans that show up on Thursday have an easier opportunity trying to get pictures of the drivers, which is a weird reason, but could be valid, with Formula 1 and the huge bounce out to social media over the last few years, which of course has been well documented not only here, but on various social medias, funnily enough. But the other one, there was a fantastic quote I saw on Twitter about it, and I'm going to have to paraphrase, but it was basically, rules are put into place because somewhere someone stupid has done something at some point. And of course, there is the very real possibility that someone's gone round on a bicycle and ridden into someone or done something like that.
Yeah, and just because it happens once, they decide to clamp down on it rather than just trust that it won't happen again, which I guess it makes a little bit of sense, but it seems like such a weird thing to be clamping down on. But then they've clamped down on a lot of stuff, as we'll get onto later as well. So maybe this is the FIA, sorry, really just taking F1 back under control after we've gone over many times what they've kind of let go of control and kind of let whatever course happens over the past 4 or 5 years. So maybe it's a good thing.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a strange one, isn't it? And I think the final, a kind of big news, wasn't it, going into the weekend, was of course that Lewis Hamilton and his physio Angela Cullins have gone separate ways.
Yeah, which they've been such a long-term thing. I think even back in McLaren, wasn't she his physio?
No, 2014 or 15, I think she came in.
Okay, fair. Well, even
it
so,
might have actually been 2016.
She's been there the majority of his championships, and there's never really been much. Like, they've always been on the record and said they have a really good working relationship. So I think it was he said something like he's let her go and pursue her dreams or whatever. So it's probably a mutual thing, but it was Hamilton's decision. It wasn't a team decision. So yeah, I don't know if that'll have an effect on Lewis, but yeah, we don't know what she's going to do next, but maybe she's got a bigger job, if that's possible, when you're physioing for the, like, statistically one of the greatest
Formula One driver of all time.
I didn't want to say it. There we go. I'll let you do the Hamilton propaganda on this podcast.
Thank you. I will continue to do so. Yeah, no, it seems like an interesting... I mean, obviously, I'm excited to see what she does next. I think she is one of those members around the paddock that, is very, very well respected and I think appreciated by a lot of the fans as well. She is a great character. But there was a little part of me, Jamie, when I was reading through, of course, when I saw the news, that sort of there was a little voice in the back of my mind going, has Lewis said to her, look, the end of this year, I'm calling it a day. If an opportunity's come up for you before then that you want to take on, I'll get through the final 20 races or whatever, and you just continue following, doing what you want. Or, have they just decided they wanted to go separate ways? That was just the one thing. Maybe I'm getting paranoid because I don't want to imagine a world without Lewis in Formula One, to be honest.
I don't think he will retire at the end of this year, to be honest. I'll go on record and say that. Okay. So play that clip in August when he's announced his retirement.
Yeah, I will be. I'll be getting that time stamped. Yeah, perhaps. Yeah, like I said, maybe I'm just getting a little bit worried. Neither of us have really ever watched Formula One properly without Lewis in it, have we?
No,
you
definitely
obviously
not.
Watched 2006 as much as you can as a 6-year-old. I came in the same year Lewis did in 2007. So it is scary to think we aren't far away because, Lewis and Fernando now are the only 2 drivers that have been there since we got into the sport. And that's scary. That is really scary.
And the next is probably Hulk, isn't it? Who's he had
a year out, so Checo, I'd argue.
Many years out.
Yeah, I'd argue Checo.
Yeah, so it's the definitely kind of the first era of us watching as fans of Formula One is definitely closing right now, and the likes of Leclerc, Norris, Verstappen are going to be here for, well, the kids, I don't know, 10, 15 years younger than us are going to be like, that's their version of Alonso, Hamilton, and I guess Schumacher probably, yeah.
It's mad, absolutely mad. Anyway, let's move on then into the weekend's action. Now, I'll give you a little bit of a backstory to how we make these podcasts. We jump on a call, and each week we go, right, which one of us is doing practice and qualifying, which one of us is doing race notes. Jamie got qualifying and practice race notes this week, and we've got nothing for pre-practice, so try and segue that for me.
I accidentally forgot that practice existed, I'll be honest with you. So, yeah, if you can remember anything that happened from practice, let us know in the comments. But I can't.
You had to freeze. Just Freeze had issues in his AlphaTauri.
I literally did.
Pretty much any running in FP3.
I didn't even notice that. I didn't follow FP3 at all. Fake podcaster over here, sorry. But yeah, we'll get straight into Q1 on Saturday. And what happened? Oh yeah, Lando Norris. Weirdly, it's not the sort of thing we see very often from Norris. We've been very appraising of him throughout his whole career, really, certainly since the big step he took in 2020. And he randomly just made an unforced error in Q1, which left him out of the session. He may have been out anyway because the car was really not that good, although in the hands of Piastri it worked quite well. But yeah, really an unforced error from Norris, hitting the inside wall of turn 27, and that was his quali done. He broke the suspension arm and had to call it a day. So lined up, I think P19, wasn't he? Or certainly out in Q1.
Right towards the back.
Yeah.
He
So
was still
very
ahead
odd.
of Sargent.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, the race will probably still give Norris a 9.0 for his recovery in the Grand Prix, but
What to 17?
yeah. But yeah, really, to be fair, we don't criticise the British drivers very often because they're all quite good. But Norris made a bit of an error there. So
A bit of a boo-boo.
indeed,
He would have
indeed.
hit that inside wall and uttered the words "oopsie poopsie."
Yes, I'm sure he would have done.
As we mentioned, though, of course, he did still out-qualify Logan Sargent, and what a weird session that was for Sargent, because his first run was quick enough to make it into Q2, but he only just put the wheel over the pit lane entry line, which is a big no-no, so that lap got invalidated, even though they told us it was track limits at turn 27, which confused everyone.
Yeah.
Then his second lap was... he messed up, he spun, yeah. And then his third lap he messed up still, so he just got slower and slower as it went on.
Yeah, ended up 39 seconds off the pace, which is pretty rough. I mean, to be fair, obviously he's a rookie. It's his second race in Formula 1, but you could definitely tell this race, and it was certainly in qualifying anyway. The potential in the car was there. I think Albon also could have done a little better in Q1, because I think the car, they were quite confident. And yeah, unfortunately for Williams, it kind of unravelled. But Sargent particularly, you're going to have these weekends when you're a new driver. You're going to be rough. So needs to get it out of his system and hopefully kick on.
Oh, exactly. And I think, that is completely fair enough. It is just his second ever weekend. Jeddah's not a particularly easy track to drive around anyway. But I think the thing that was gutting was just the fact he did look comfortable and quicker than Albon in that session. It would have been nice for him, get that confidence boost. As much as I like Alex Albon as well, it would have been nice for him, to get that confidence boost and get that car into Q2 ahead of his teammate. Especially, obviously, when you remember that last race he ended up out in Q1 by nothing.
Yeah. So I think he'll dust himself down. He'll go again in Australia. It's a little bit of an easier track, and it should also suit the Williams. So
yeah, hopefully, fingers crossed. But obviously we had Lando Norris, both Williams, and they were then joined by both Alpha Tauris out in Q1. And then, Jamie, Q2 got spicy, didn't it?
Yes, it did. And Max Verstappen, well, basically immediately before any times were set, had a transmission problem. So I think he just lost gears and then had to bring it back to the garage. So no time to repair the car, despite how magical the Red Bull engineers have been in the past. And he was out 15th place, and he was absolutely nailed on for pole position. He was dominating the whole weekend up to this point. The car was definitely the fastest over one lap and in over 50 laps as well. And he had Perez at an arm's length all weekend. So it was a big shame for Verstappen, but I think the really telling thing is that he was smiling in his interview afterwards, because obviously if this is 2021, he would have been fuming. He'd have been like, what on earth is happening with the team? We got to sort this out. But he already knows he's going to win the title, doesn't he?
Pretty much.
Yeah. So out in 15th, unfortunately. Obviously, he got a win from 14th on the grid last year in Spa, and from 10th on the grid in Hungary. So this would have been his record, his personal best from lowest win position. But unfortunately, he didn't end up winning. So spoilers, he didn't actually win the race. But yeah,
and
it was
only one driver has ever won from P15 on the grid, Jamie.
Yeah, and we don't talk about that race.
We don't talk about that race, you're absolutely right. For those newer Formula 1 fans out there, I mean, it does make me chuckle when you see Alonso propaganda here, there and everywhere, and it goes, well, Hamilton and Verstappen have only ever won races from P14 and then won. You got Alonso's won from 15. Yes, in a race his team rigged. How can anyone say that with a straight face?
Singapore 2008. Go look it up if you're really a fan.
Crashgate. Just Google Crashgate.
And then imagine that it didn't come out for a year. So it was a year later that everyone actually found out that they rigged it. So they would have got away with it if it weren't for that.
If it weren't for those meddling Brazilians.
PK.
Yeah. But yeah, Q2 though, again, that was kind of the only really exciting thing that happened, and of course it gave us a little bit of extra excitement, because of course now it meant that there might be a fight heading into Q3, but Hulk, Zhou Guanyu, Magnussen, Bottas, Verstappen therefore were out in Q2.
Hulk and Joe both out-qualifying their teammates. Well done.
Yep, hats off to them. And then, of course, unfortunately, we forgot that despite the fact that Max was out, his teammate is also the street circuit wizard. It's Checo Perez.
Yeah, and after the first runs in Q3, it was fairly clear that Perez was probably going to get a pole, because he was 0.4 of a second clear of anyone else. I think Alonso was second after the first runs.
Yes, yeah.
But then on the second runs, Perez was last in the running order, so everyone else had a shot at his pole position time first, and then he was the last to cross the line. Leclerc actually got within a tenth and a half, basically. He was very, very close to getting me 2 points in the prediction game, which would have been the scabbiest 2 points you ever seen. But unfortunately not. He couldn't quite top Perez, and no one else could either. I don't think Alonso really improved. Stroll actually went purple sector 1.
That's what I was going to say.
Yeah, purple 1, and then what? He was up in
Green.
sector 2, wasn't he?
He was a tenth of a second up at the end of sector 2 still on Perez, and somehow lost 3/4 of a second.
And then ended up
in
fifth
what is
place.
one real
If Stroll
corner.
had got pole, that would have been insane. I think
Second
we
pole.
all we're just here for the chaos of Stroll being good. I think.
Well, this was something I was going to mention later on in today's show, but I'll kind of force it in here quickly. How frustrating is it that Aston Martin now have got a brilliant car, but of course, you could have a brilliant driver lineup in that team, but the fact it's got to be Stroll and someone good. Yeah. You think like that could be, when you sort of look down the grid, you go, Lando Norris could try and get that gig, or someone else like that.
Someone like that.
Charles Leclerc, but no, of course, we're stuck with a pensioner and the dad's son.
I mean, Alonso's a good driver.
Annoying. Yeah, well, yeah, I suppose, but still, it's just annoying, isn't it? You just feel like they're crowding. Well, I mean, yeah, Alonso's still winding back the years, but can't we just get a second decent driver in that car?
But then the only reason that team's doing well is because his dad's paid for the team.
Yeah, I know, but still.
Yeah,
a boy
it's kind of like credit where it's due. Lawrence has done a good job, so Lance is reaping the benefits. But yeah, that ended up with Perez on pole position. Despite not improving, he just didn't really finish his lap in the second runs. Talking of not really doing much of a lap, but Lewis Hamilton was down in 8th place, 3/10 off his teammate who qualified third. Well, effectively third once the Leclerc's penalty was applied. And yeah, Hamilton had an absolute shocker in Q3, and yeah, kind of all qualifying he was held at an arm's length by Russell. But at the end of Q3, he just didn't even get a lap in. I don't know what went on. Do you have any thoughts as a Hamilton fan?
It clearly just, memories of last year's Saudi GP for him as well. Of course, that race didn't exactly go well either. I think, I don't know. There is a little part of me that wonders, how fed up is Lewis in that murk at the moment.
His qualifying interview afterwards was absolutely depressing. If I was a fan of his, but it was, not great. Not great from him.
No, I think there needs to be... I mean, there's already, isn't there, hush talks about Mercedes. They're already apparently developing a completely different car that apparently is already quicker than the car they've got. But we do really need to wait and see because, again, maybe there's just a little bit of nerves coming from me, but I'm a little bit worried about my boy at the moment. Yeah,
fair enough, and it's probably right to be. And then Oscar Piastri actually got his car to Q3 as well, so well done to him.
He did a mega job.
Yeah, he did in qualifying especially.
23 thousandths behind Lewis in that muck Honda. Actually, it's not a muck Honda, sorry.
Muck Honda would be good actually at this point.
It would be.
Yeah, and joined by the two Alpines in Q3. Ocon was 7th and Gasly 10th. So, yeah, straight onto the race.
Yeah, let's get straight into that race then, as you said. Alonso immediately causing controversy, Jamie. The most experienced driver on the grid, the wily old fox, El Plan, La Mission, can't mark between white lines.
Yeah, and he got us all excited by taking the lead at turn 1, only for halfway around lap 1, the little message comes up from the FIA that he's under investigation. And it was just typical like water on the fire immediately. And we saw this for Ocon in Bahrain, didn't we? So the FIA, this is one of the other things they're really clamping down on. I don't really see the point.
I do.
Rules are rules, so...
It's always the shot, I think, it's of 2017 Shanghai.
Yeah, when
Sebastian Vettel's like 2/3 of the way out of his grid box, trying to defend from Lewis Hamilton, who I think Hamilton still went on to win that race.
He did, but only because he got a cheap pit stop when I say to go through the pit lane.
Yeah, what happens, mate. But yeah, I mean, it was just such a strange error for a driver like Fernando Alonso to make. And, of course, just like Ocon last week, they messed it up, but didn't mess it up. We'll talk about that a little bit later on in the show. But, Yeah, as well, of course, we had Hamilton starting on the hards for some reason. Everyone else on the mediums, apart from Charles Leclerc and I think a couple of backmarker cars, were on the softs. And then there was already controversy down in Turn 1 when Oscar Piastri, after a brilliant qualifying, Alpine decided, you didn't race our car this year, you're getting sent to the shadow round.
Yeah, and there wasn't really much made of this, but I feel like Gasly, it was a bit of a lack of awareness, really, but it didn't cost him anything.
Lack of awareness.
So no one really complained, and they just moved on. But Piastri was down in last after changing his front wing.
Yes.
So yeah, a little bit of a first lap mistake from Gasly, but then can you call it a mistake when he didn't really suffer? Kind of just a bit of rudeness, elbows out, and got away with it. So fair play.
Just because you make a mistake that doesn't impact you directly, Jimmy, doesn't make it not a mistake. That might be the most sociopathic thing you've ever said on this show.
It's probably a long list of sociopathic things that
probably. You could do a compilation at some
accident.
point between us. Yeah.
Yeah, a little bit of a shame. Well, massive shame for Piastri. Gasly.
And it got even worse, didn't it? Because his front wing falling off then hit the other McLaren. So they both had front wing damage, despite the fact they started nowhere near each other. So they were both at the back by lap 3, and then it was just a disaster, pretty much like Bahrain, from then on.
They actually got to race a bit, though, with each other.
Yeah, but only each other.
And with Sargent as well, which they couldn't pass for the whole race. But
yeah, exactly. But I did just moan about the Canadian fraud in an Aston Martin. Did do a banging overtake on Carlos Sainz down at the bank turn 12 lap 1, didn't he?
He did. Absolutely wall of death around the outside. Quality stuff from Stroll.
Quality.
Into, what was it, P4 at that point?
Yes.
So yeah, excellent stuff. And he's always been fairly good at first laps, usually because he's qualifying well out of position, which maybe was the case here when you look Alonso on the front row. But yeah, good overtake, credit where it's due, fair play.
Yeah, and of course, obviously, the race was so boring that when we were going through making the notes, I had forgot that Alonso had jumped Checo at the start of the race. Yeah. But I mean, all of us knew the Red Bull was going to get back past him, and pretty much the first chance for DRS Checo went past him. Did make a bit of a hash of the overtake, but did, of course, still pull it off there. And I mean, this weekend was quite an important one for Sergio Perez, because I think, with Max with issues, this had to be a must-win Grand Prix for Sergio Perez. And it had to be a must-win race where there was no hassle involved in it either. You just had to get on with it. He lost the lead at the start, but again, learn to line up your car properly. But yeah, then pretty much from then on, never really looked back. Did also make me chuckle, though. Hamilton getting a warning for excessive weaving down the straight. Felt like that one, correct me if I'm wrong, Jamie, but I felt that one was a bit harsh.
Yeah, a little bit, because he was clearly just trying to break the toe, which we've seen numerous times from a certain Dutchman in a certain championship finale one time. But yeah, it was weird. I do feel like the FIA have basically got their strict pants on and are like, right, we're gonna absolutely
tight pants.
Yeah, that's the one. And just basically clamp down on every little thing they can and tell Hamilton to take his earrings off as well. So yeah, it's very. I find it a little odd, and I feel like the over penalising or the over refereeing, as it were, is something they're going through a phase of doing. I feel like they're kind of going extreme with it now so that everyone gets in line and then they can relax a little bit, and maybe we see a cycle of that where it ends up back where they make decisions based on excitement.
They're doing it in an extreme way, but we're still not getting good wheel-to-wheel battles a lot of the time because people are still allowed to barge each other off the road. That's what they've got to be worrying about.
No, we haven't really seen that this season yet, have we?
A little bit already.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it's the next thing to come, but we'll see. I do look forward to the first big race, like wheel-to-wheel decision they have to make, and which way that goes.
Depends who it involves, I suppose. But of course, early on though, I mean, Charles Leclerc, Max Verstappen both were making very good progress, pretty much back to where you'd expect them to be early enough in the GP. Ferrari then actually do a good strategy and overcut Lance Stroll as he's forced to pit with the smooth operator right behind him. And then on lap 18, Stroll breaks down.
Yes, and as we've seen many times in the past, this basically ruined the race. They brought the safety car out, and there goes any chance of anything interesting happening, because everyone is obviously going to take the opportunity to get a free stop if they haven't already, and that leaves everyone on the same strategy, and everyone goes to the end of the race. So there's no more pit stops. They're all in a rough order of where they should be. So there's nothing really going on. I think I recall 2020 Silverstone, the first race, the one that actually did get exciting in the last few laps, but that was the same situation. There was a safety car just at the point of a pit window. Everyone peeled into the pits, and the race was dead until lap 50 when everyone started getting punctures. So, yeah, sadly we didn't get the last lap excitement here, and it basically, ruined any chance we had of different strategies or anything interesting really happening for the rest of the race. So yeah.
And it also, of course, because, let's be fair, didn't need to be a safety car, did it either?
No.
Stroll was far enough out of the way that I'm pretty certain I could have moved that car from where I was sat on my sofa at home. You just did not need a safety car, but it did mean that Max Verstappen was back towards the front of the field, and it meant that although we had less overtakes, I mean, let's be fair, it was just going to be him slipstreaming and flying past someone. It did allow us, a little bit of potential controversy down at Red Bull. What were they going to do about Checo at the front of the field? But before we got to that, Alex Albon then had a brake failure and just carried on driving with it for like 2 laps.
Yeah, very strange, because he said, came on the radio, panics, I've got a brake failure, what do I do? And then he just carries on pinning the throttle everywhere and doesn't get out of the way for quite a long time. Screws over Hulkenberg, who was right behind him, which is no surprise. And
how can he screw over Hulkenberg when he's not slowing down? Really that, Jamie?
Well, he was making, he couldn't get the car slowed down, could he, properly, so it was costing him time, definitely. But yeah, he unfortunately had to retire the car. But yeah, sad for Albon, but he was never really going to get points, I don't think, anyway, to be honest.
He was right there on the cusp.
Yeah, he was around there, wasn't he? But the safety car didn't favour him. I think he was behind Tsunoda and Magnussen already, who were the two that ended up having quite a good battle, actually, for P10.
Yes, and of course, then we saw the Honda Power Unit really. I mean, the way Max just went past Russell was insane, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It was something ridiculous. Over the midfield cars, Max Verstappen had a 17-mile-an-hour advantage top-end speed, which is cartoonishly fast. I mean, that is. I'm not gonna. I think Hamilton saying that Red Bull is the most dominant car he's ever seen is not quite fair, because that 2014 Mercedes was still ridiculous.
Was a second and a half quicker than everything else, basically.
But around a track like Saudi, it wasn't far away, was it, that Red Bull? I mean, I think it was a little bit like Spa last year, where it really just is a track that suits their car as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, down the straights, that thing was an absolute rocket ship. Absolutely,
and it paid off for Verstappen getting straight back up into P2 ahead of Russell and Alonso, and he just kind of got on with it, didn't he? And the gap when he got into second place was about 5 seconds, I think, between Perez and Verstappen. It fluctuated quite a lot, but never really came below 4 seconds. So there was a little bit of politics on the radio, but it never blew up like we maybe expected.
No, and I think, of course, on the contrary to Max, therefore, being given sort of a couple of free places and allowing to move forward, Ferrari just got then stuck, didn't they? In 6th and 7th. They couldn't even match Merckx, and they were still obviously behind Alonso, which was a little bit strange.
Yeah, especially when they qualified second, or Leclerc put his car second on the grid.
Leclerc's just mega over one lap, though, isn't he?
Yeah.
I think people now are starting to appreciate the absolute dog he's trying to drag around, at least on a qualifying lap. But I think, as well, you mentioned the Red Bull politics. Sergio Perez, he's been in this game long enough now. I'm gonna tip my hat, dot my hat to him just briefly, because he was very, very clever over the radio, wasn't he? When they were telling him about doing 133s. Yeah,
and I think he's been in that team long enough now to know that he won't be the favoured driver if there was to be team orders.
When there's team orders.
Yeah, when there are team orders, as we saw in Brazil, for instance. Although that was to favour him, ironically.
Didn't work though, did it?
No, it didn't work. But yeah, he was very clever. They obviously told him to slow down, and he was like, "What's Max doing?" And then didn't. Neither of them really slowed down.
No, hence why they were still setting. Well, I mean, they were both told to do a 1:33.0, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
And I think Checo did a 32.2. fastest and maxed at a 31.9. So neither of those really sound like 33 zeros.
No, not particularly. So yeah, it was clever from Perez. He's obviously doesn't want to be a Mark Webber in that team, but kind of feel like he might be. I think he's a bit, obviously the Webber and Vettel thing. I think the gap between Webber's ability and Vettel's ability, certainly their ceilings, was bigger than Perez and Verstappen's.
I think different cars as well.
Very different cars.
I think the cars, that early 2010 era was basically designed for Sebastian Vettel. But yeah, I think that's a debate for another day.
Yeah,
I guess the only other really sad thing going on was, of course, as we mentioned earlier on, Logan Sargent was able to defend from the McLarens even when they had DRS. Like, they weren't closing in on him down the straights, which goes to show, A, how slippery that Williams is down the straights, and B, what a diabolical situation McLaren are in at the moment.
Yeah, it's not looking good. And I think their major upgrade package is not until Baku, which is a long way down the line, isn't it? So, yeah, it's looking rough. I'd be saying that though. Like, Piastri obviously did put the car in P9 in the qualifying. Norris had his car 11th in Bahrain. So, if they had a smooth race, I think points are the way F1 is right now, with the big four teams now, because Aston Martin have pulled something out of nowhere. You're kind of looking at most 8th, 9th places anyway. So the good thing for McLaren is no one that they're battling will really get too far ahead.
Alpine
may do, although even then they're finishing 8th and 9th, aren't they? So it's
that's still 6 points you're gaining over someone that's already still on 0 points and needing a miracle. Because I think it's obviously, as you mentioned, those big four teams. Alpine look pretty dead set to be taking away a lot of the scraps.
Yeah.
Where do the likes of Alfa Romeo, McLaren, Haas come into this? Where McLaren have got to be sat there at the moment going, where do we pick up points from right now?
Yeah, because their primary thing is to A, make their car work, and B, they need to be getting ahead of the likes of Haas and Alfa Romeo, who definitely seem a step ahead right now. Because McLaren seem kind of on a par with AlphaTauri, with Williams, which basically at the back. So yeah, it's a tough situation. You wonder how long both those drivers really are going to be sticking around. Because they're both high quality drivers.
I think
not being given a car capable right now.
Still, this belief isn't there about the new wind tunnel. I think that's the thing, isn't it? McLaren want to try and get this new wind tunnel dialed in and everything like that. But yeah, of course, Sergio Perez, I think it was also, fair play to him. Did do everything he needed to. And, of course, a little bit of redemption as well for last year. Beats out, obviously, Max, and then the whole controversy around Fernando Alonso. Where do we begin with that?
Yeah, it was odd. It was very strange. I think, we've seen in the past, basically the rules are outdated. I think the rules that we're talking about, obviously Alonso gets his 5-second penalty. He serves it under the safety car when a safety car is deployed in the pit lane. So he still takes the 5-second penalty. And there was concerns at first that you're not allowed to take the penalty on the safety car. They were quickly put to bed because you can serve it under the safety car, which I actually think is stupid. But
that needs to be changed.
Yeah. But then the big issue was one of the rear jack men put, obviously no mechanics are allowed to touch the car before the 5 seconds has been served. And the rear jack man put his jack under the rear wing of the car, didn't raise it or anything, just had it close, ready to raise, which all the mechanics are doing. And they initially, on lap 50, on the cooldown lap, the FIA realised this and penalised Alonso with a further 10-second penalty, like we saw for Ocon in Bahrain, which effectively raised Russell up to P3 temporarily. I didn't watch the race live, so I didn't see the podium celebrations or anything.
Alonso was on the podium. Still.
Alonso was on the podium, was he? Okay. So it was just a whole mess, really, because Mercedes obviously later on said, "Great, we're on the podium." Russell finished third because of this penalty, and then Aston Martin appealed. I don't know what their basis of appeal was. Maybe that the mechanic wasn't touching the car, or maybe that he wasn't working on the car, which I think is the actual wording.
So this was the bizarre thing about it. Now, again, this is one of those things where we're in a billion-dollar sport. How little things like this still slip through the cracks, I will never quite understand.
Yeah.
But the way Aston Martin, and apparently a lot of the other teams had interpreted the rules, was, of course, that the jacks aren't technically mechanics because they're not altering anything on the car. The jacks are still part of the parking process. So all the examples that Aston Martin showed the FIA were the front jack, which is actually meant to be excluded from those personnel that can't touch the car, but it was only ever put in the rulebook as the jack men or women. So Aston Martin went back going, well, it's the rear jack. You haven't said technically we can't use it. Here's a load of examples of the front jack being able to go with it. La mission El Plan, give old man his 100th podium because you've already made the graphic for it. And they did. So the third place trophy just kept getting shipped off between Mercedes and Aston Martin all evening.
Yeah, and it ended up in the Aston Martin camp with Alonso's 100th podium, which is a massive achievement. I think only 6 other drivers, is it, who've done that?
5 other drivers.
5 other drivers. Alonso becomes the 6th.
Can you name them all?
Hamilton's
got more wins than Alonso has podiums.
Not for long at this rate.
Not for long at this rate. No. About another 3 races. A month and a half.
This is not the quiz, by the way. The quiz is for you later. Hamilton, Prost.
Yeah.
Raikkonen.
Yeah.
Oh, Schumacher.
Yeah.
Who would be the other one? Oh, Vettel. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. But the fact Vettel is going to end up with fewer podiums than Alonso with double his world championships is quite mad.
Which is what I put on our Twitter group chat earlier. Jamie didn't come up with that himself.
I didn't, but I'm going to not give it any credit. So there we go. Where were we? The FIA don't know what they're doing. Yes, and that was kind of the end of the race then. So Red Bull won 2, which I feel like we'll be saying a lot this season. Alonso ended up 6 hours late going on the podium in 3rd place.
Again.
Thankfully, I missed all of that drama by watching the race on Channel 4 later on. So, yeah, didn't really get messed around by the FIA, which is a win for me. And, yeah, the rest of the order, Russell P4.
Yep.
Hamilton 5th, actually did all right in the race, especially had the safety car not screwed him, because he did get quite unlucky with that. Because he had to basically bin off his hard stint early and go to the mediums, which were not ideal, not the optimal
I don't
strategy.
think they made much difference come the end of the day, to be honest.
No. Leclerc and Sainz, obviously we mentioned P6 and 7, ahead of both Alpines, Ocon ahead of Gasly, and then Magnussen nabbing the final point with absolutely banging overtake on Yuki Tsunoda about the 14th time of asking. Down the inside of turn 1, both fully locked up, but he got it done, so fair play. And also shout out Zhou Guanyu. Matt doesn't think this is real, but I did. I saw it.
I also have seen the move. It's just nowhere near as impressive as
it
making
is.
it out to
It's
be.
a great move. His move on Logan Sargent.
He's gone around the outside of a rookie on the clean side of the track, and he's broke about 10 metres later. What's so amazing about that?
It was a great move. It was a great move from Joe.
Okay, Jamie, apparently. Driver of the day, though. Jamie183. Who are we giving it to?
Driver of the day. I mean, no one did amazingly well. They kind of just all did as you expect, really.
I love the fact Verstappen's gone 15th to 2nd and we still don't.
Well, I expected a win still. To be
I tell you one person that clearly did expect a win, and that was Jos Verstappen.
Yeah,
just
he was not happy.
Quick little mention to him. You can't say the words I want to say about him on YouTube, but he's just such a hateful character, isn't he?
He's very, very dislikable indeed.
So easily to dislike.
Yeah. I will give driver of the day to Verstappen for old time's sake.
Fair enough. I think
we have a quiz to do.
I was actually going to allow me to do my driver of the day, but apparently I don't get one. So carry on with your quiz.
Okay, let's do the quiz, and then Matt can do his driver of the day. Sergio Perez took his 6th Grand Prix victory.
Is it 6?
I think it's 6 now.
I thought we only have 5.
Oh, maybe it is his 5th. Maybe I'm wrong, but regardless, I think it's his 26th podium. He has shared the podium, shared the rostrum with 16 other drivers.
Oh no!
In his Grand Prix career, you have 1 minute to name 16 of the drivers that Sergio Perez has shared a podium with. Any time is going.
Max Verstappen, Charles Leclerc, Hamilton, Rosberg, Bottas,
Doing well.
Vettel,
Indeed.
Alonso, Kobayashi?
No.
Grosjean?
Yep.
I already said Raikkonen, didn't I?
No. Never is there.
Okay. Trying to think, other drivers.
You've got
Ocon,
7
Stroll,
left. Yep. You've got 5 left and 10 seconds.
Ricardo.
Yep.
I
Think last year. I mean, your time's up.
I'll take that, actually. I think I did all right.
You
I
had
tried
4
not to
left, so
panic.
12 out of 16, but
That's pretty good. 75% is good going.
That's pretty good. You did forget about last year, basically, was the issue. George Russell.
Russell, yeah, of course.
Lando Norris.
I would not have remembered that one.
Imola, yeah. And Carlos Sainz at Silverstone. And a couple of other places as well.
I was there at Silverstone. And Imola. I was there.
Yeah. And the other one was probably the hardest. You didn't get Pierre Gasly at Baku.
Oh, yeah.
In 2021.
Yes.
That's probably fair enough.
I think if you'd given me the races as well, then I could have been able to get more of those.
Not enough time for that, sadly. But who was your driver of the day with that intermission?
Well, I was going to say Sergio Perez, but apparently I'm not allowed a driver of the day, so...
No, not this time.
Perez was my driver of the day, though, I think. Did everything that could have been asked of him. And to be honest, it was just funny to see Jos Verstappen so upset because how dare his son come P2?
Yeah, exactly. Still leads the championship, though, which for a second he wasn't. Until the last lap, fastest lap, which I think Verstappen is going for the lead the championship from start to finish trophy, isn't he? So exactly. I feel like he was very glad that he got that fastest lap in.
Well, what's it now? He's led the World Championship for 34 consecutive... No, it's not that much, is it?
He took the lead maybe around 7.
He didn't lead early on last year.
Yeah.
But he also... Still then, Jamie, one of the bizarrest records I heard him banging on about on Sky. I don't know if you knew this. Max Verstappen could have broke Schumacher's record of winning, I think it was 16 Grand Prix out of 21. They're still both tied on 15 out of 20, which is such a ridiculously useless stat, sorry, that I don't really know sort of what relevance it holds.
Yeah, not particularly. It's a cool stat, though. He's just dominating the sport, isn't he? Which is great for everyone.
Yeah. F1 Fantasy. Jamie183.
Yes.
How did you get on this week?
Is horrifically boring. It did do quite well. But
did you change your team?
I did. Only slightly. I was on Verstappen, Leclerc, Alonso, Gasly, I think.
Okay.
And now I'm on Verstappen, Perez, Alonso, Stroll.
Fair enough.
So I've gone full Red Bull, full Aston Martin, and Nico Hülkenberg.
Who are your teams?
Red Bull and Aston Martin.
Oh, okay. How can you stretch that out then?
Because Hulk's really cheap, and Aston Martin obviously are massively underpriced based on how they should be.
Yeah, but I'm just looking at it. We've got exactly the same team, except for I've got Gasly, not Stroll.
Stroll's cheaper than Gasly. So.
Is he? I need to get Stroll in my team.
Exactly.
Well, not
we
this
have
weekend.
the same team for the rest of the season.
Pretty much, yeah.
So I didn't do as well as I could have done because of Stroll's DNF, but it was still a pretty good week.
How many points?
I got 282.
Oh!
You've done better than me again.
I've done better than you again.
Oh,
Get in the mud. Get in the bin. 302 points to your boy.
I thought that might be the case because obviously Stroll got minus 14. So
yes, yeah. I was quite happy. Actually, to be fair, I should have tripled Max Verstappen.
I thought about it, but I'm like, he's going to win so many races this season. You might as well save
There's
it.
There's going to be plenty of opportunities. But he did score more points because he was further back. He got bonus points for overtakes.
Yeah, that's the case, isn't it? But he won't. He didn't get any streaks or sprint races or anything. So
no.
I feel like there'll be ample opportunity to triple captain Max. So.
Yeah, at some point somewhere. Yeah. Shout out as well quickly to the guy that put $1,000 on Verstappen winning the race early in the weekend for, and I quote, the easiest £300 of my life profit.
Yeah. The net £1,300 loss has gone down well.
Yes, I'm sure it has. My third team, did better than you as well. Quickly, just as a shout out, which has Verstappen, Leclerc, Alonso, Hülkenberg, and Zhou Guanyu.
Very good.
Get mugged. Where does that rank us, Jamie, in the Matt212 League?
Out of 819 teams, because F1 Fantasy is dead. So please join our league, because we're scraping the barrel here. I am 254th, so not great.
Oh!
Are you in the top 100?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Jamie, I
I
am
see you.
76th.
Fair play.
I'm in the top 10% of my own league.
It's so easy to get, like, the best team, basically.
Yeah, they desperately... I mean, it's a pretty dead league, once again, like we said. But they desperately do need to fix it, so it's at least a bit more of a challenge. Because, basically, at the moment, everyone's just putting the same team every week. I think as well, actually, for the first time in a long time, Jamie, I can be quite confident about our little own predictions game as well, can't I? Mr. Ferrari double podium.
We've done quite similarly, I reckon.
Overall.
No. Well, I don't think you put Alonso in.
No, I didn't. You're right. Neither of us did for some reason.
So I feel like we both done rubbish, really. So stop.
We have done both pretty rubbish. How many points were we on at the opening week? Was it 6 against 2? Or was it 6 against 4?
I got 6, definitely. I feel like you got 2.
I'm just trying to scroll all the way back, which is taking quite a long time. So yeah, you were on 6, I was on 2. So I had a 4-point deficit coming into this weekend. Jamie, if I'm not mistaken, you scored 1 point.
What, just for Verstappen on the podium?
Verstappen on the podium, wrong position. Wow, I scored 2.
Well done. Well done. Because I
got both Red Bulls on the podium. So that brings it down to 7 against 4.
Yeah.
I'm closing it back up.
I'll put it in the chat so we can actually remember as well.
Yes, we do need to keep track of that once again. But, yeah, I mean, let's be fair. We've done pretty well to make this almost a 50-minute podcast still, haven't we? What would be, Jamie, your race rating out of 10 for the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix?
Probably like a 4.
Yeah,
I genuinely didn't enjoy it very much, to be honest.
Well, put it this way, I had a huge yawn coming into it. I genuinely felt quite drowsy. So I think for me, I'm going to give it a 3.
Yeah, not great.
Not a great weekend.
At least next race, it's over by 8 a.m, so we can get on with our day.
We can then get on with our day, yeah, which is always nice. Of course, we will be back to review all the action from the Australian Grand Prix in just under 2 weeks' time. But of course, we'll be back next week with a pre-show as well. Thank you all, as always, so much for listening. If you have enjoyed, please do make sure to leave a like, get yourself subscribed. Like we said, follow us on all your favourite podcasting places, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or even here on YouTube. And yeah, we will be back next week then with more Knowing Wheel.